So go ahead and...
Because I did martial arts.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Had to.
Okay.
If not,
it's perfect for someone your size.
Well, yeah, because I was bullied from the first day of school to the last.
Really?
I had to learn.
Where did you go to school, Randy?
Up north.
Up north. Where are you from?
Ohio.
Okay.
So, anyway, but yeah, I was bullied terrible. And it was bad.
Yeah.
And if you didn't learn something, I self-taught myself.
Yeah. I
was no Bruce Lee. Oh, my Lord. Well, not that way, but I had enough sense and knew kind of if I had to, I could get away from here, make you wish you had left me alone. And I did that once or twice. I didn't want to, but I did.
And no, I don't think anybody ever does want to. Like, that's not
who I am.
Yeah.
At all. But I want to tell you my Bruce Lee story.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go for it.
Right now?
Well, or we can do it. We can do it after the show.
Right? Yeah. Let's do it after the show.
That sounds good. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm recording here with Randy Smith. So I've known you I didn't go to Clarksville till 8th grade, so I wouldn't have known you before then, really. Yeah. But you're somebody I saw about every day for several years of my life. And then when did you had, what was a tumor? When did you?
Surgery. It wasn't a tumor. When I was in the 3rd grade, and it was after 3rd grade, during the summer, all the boys in the neighborhood would play baseball. Well, my friend was standing out in my yard. I looked out the window. I thought, oh, there he is, John. And he's a big old guy. And I'm this little, short guy. So John didn't see me coming. And I didn't know John was swinging a bat. I didn't see it. He knocked me over into the ditch. He hit me on my right side, about the temple area. And, of course, back then, there was no money for doctors much. Mm-hmm. This is like in the 50s, thereabouts, and there was no real money. And so...
and how evolved are brain procedures in the United States in 1950?
Yeah, it wasn't good. And so anyway, but I just had a big old knot come up on my head. The next day it was gone, and I was fine. Everything's great, except when I went back to school, I flunked every grade.
Oh my gosh!
All the way through. Yeah, I couldn't focus anymore like I used to.
You had a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, very bad, and I didn't know.
Did you have any symptoms like?
Not until I got older. Well, there was symptoms. I couldn't concentrate, and I have to watch you. And I would study you while you're talking to me so I can try to remember what you said. And when I was in school back then, and they were good teachers, but there was no program really set up to help someone that was having struggles. They would just push you on. I passed every grade. F's, but I passed. Well, that's just the way it was.
Yeah, Yeah,
and when I got older, I started getting some dizzy spells. That didn't happen until like in the late 70s. But things started to progressively get a little worse, and I would forget stuff. I would have dizzy spells, and it just kept getting worse. And but the only thing that really helped me was I was an avid reader from the tiny little thing I was. I devoured books all through that. And so in 2005 then, I was right in the middle of building a house that we live in now.
Which is a beautiful spot. Like that kind of like how, like I said, we were talking right before the podcast, when I see you make your post, it's like part of your persona. It's like the cabin, the fire, the coffee.
Yes, I do that.
The outside.
Try to, that's who I am.
Yeah.
But so anyway, about 2005, then I had to be med flighted to UMAS. And
did you have like just a dizzy spell, or?
Well, yeah, there was a custodian that I worked with in 2005, and before this happened, I had to go to the hospital like on the 18th of November. Well, that month before that, I would be getting tired, and I'd go into one of the classrooms where there was no classes and sit down and put my head down. Well, I got to noticing one day, I saw the custodian look in the window at me through the door. He was watching me, and I thought, oh, maybe he just wants something. I never made the connection, and I would have headaches, and and then it just got progressively worse, and I would start having a headache around right after lunch, maybe, and then before I went home, I'd have a headache, and when I would go home, I'd do my martial arts routine and exercise and lift weights and do all of that, plus build the house, and then So anyway, that one night I had the mother of all headaches. And the next morning, and I toughed it. I'm a tough little guy.
Well, no, I feel like, man, if that was me, I'd be nervous. Anytime something comes up, like I had this little issue with something underneath on the bottom of my mouth, like calcium, like people getting their tonsils.
Yeah.
Rare, super rare. But man, I was super worried about it. Went to the doctor. He wasn't worried about it at all. But man, I remember before I went, like you did, and I put off going. Yeah. My dentist said something to me about it twice, and I was just like, and then they said the word oral surgery. Yeah. And I was like,
that's scary.
Oh, what? But I made an appointment. Luckily, this guy's daughter's come here to the gym. Yeah. But nobody, I feel like you get this. I told him, I was like, I'm mentally suffering through this more than any physical symptom. But man, it sounds like you were physical symptoms. And how was it? Were you just trying to be tough, put off going to the doctor? Were you just nervous about going to the doctor? You didn't want bad news?
No, I don't even think that way. I am a stubborn little guy, very, very stout. And so, because I do all my exercises, do my martial arts exercises, and I would just work through it and go on. That's what I was used to doing. But this time, what I did was it was such a horrendous headache, I couldn't hardly stand it. But I went to bed anyway, took some aspirins, and it helped ease it. Oh, I'm okay. Until the next morning. And Cheryl was up getting around for work, and I told her, I said, Cheryl, you're going to take me to the hospital. Something ain't right. Because matter of fact, one time I knew something was coming because I was walking down past one of the teachers' classrooms, and all of a sudden, it looked like I was looking through a waterfall. I thought, whoa. And I just went on about my business like nothing was wrong. I'll work through it. So anyway, they took me to the hospital at Clarksville, and I remember getting out of the truck, walking in the building, waking up on the operating table at Little Rock. I literally woke up they were getting ready to operate on me, and I looked around, and there's all these guys and women too standing around, and they all had blue suits on, and a mask. I thought, where am I? I didn't even know where. I didn't know. I'd forgotten.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild.
And the thing about Randy is, I was going to go home. I said, "What are we doing?" And they started telling me. I said, "You're nuts. I'm not going to get an operation. You're talking about brain surgery here, mister." And
you hadn't given any, that you remembered. You didn't give any consent or anything. Did your wife have to agree for you and stuff?
Yeah, but they had to go get her because Randy was getting up. I was going to go home. And they finally told me, said, no, you'll die. And so I said, okay, doc, you do what you got to do and don't look back. And they did. Well, I woke up in the recovery room, and here comes this doctor. I could still hear his brogue. He was from Scotland. And he said, Randy, you're a miracle. We thought you would be blind or paralyzed. That's how bad it was. He said, but you're not. And so and I remember, laying there, and people would come and see me. And he told Cheryl, I said, Randy will be here for 3 days. And then for 2 weeks, for 2 weeks. And then he'll have to have therapy. I went home 3 days. And the doctor said, I cannot believe this.
So you think, so you think that was your mindset? Going, like you said a second ago, like, I don't even think that way. Right? Yeah, you think that is just like your mindset, like as a person that you had developed that's because I'm fascinated when I hear stories of like, this guy fell out of a plane, broke every bone in his body. They told him he'd never walk again. He walks out of the hospital 3 weeks later. Yeah. So, which you're another story too, right? So like I hear these stories about this guy got struck by lightning and then he's a genius or something like that, right?
I heard a lot of stories that way.
But what okay, post surgeries, 3 by miraculous recovery, it sounds like. What was it like after?
Well, let me tell you this part first, because I want everybody to understand how prayer works.
Okay.
Well, when the students found out that I was in trouble.
Oh, I remember.
They got together, my wife told me, said, Randy, and the teachers told me later, Randy, they got out of the classrooms, went to the cafeteria or the auditorium, got in groups, began to pray for you. So I told them when I recovered and come back, I said, you're the reason I'm here, students, because you prayed for me. You loved me enough and cared enough about me to pray. I would not be here. Did the doctors do a good job? Oh, yeah. But they still can't believe it. They said, Randy, this is a miracle. How did you do this? We told you 2 weeks in therapy. You went home 3 days, not 1 day of therapy. And I've never had therapy after that, not once.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, I remember you going through that. I would have been in 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And
about right, yeah.
Okay, so, and I want to say also, and I could have been there. I remember I came in, hung out around the auditorium and stuff, even a little bit after I graduated, right? I was even in a play that they did, the Thunderstruck and Possum Grape. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't really remember that.
Stalls he's done it, I think, a couple of times. Rhonda K. Shook is the author, right? She's from around Clarksville.
Yeah, I know the name.
You know, she's related to Miss Sosby somehow.
Oh, okay, yes.
Because like Burley Shook and Shelby Shook, yeah. So she's related to them because Burley's I played the character Burley in the play, and I knew Burley Shook. He's since passed away, but but I hung out, and so I remember you even showed up, I think, to read some poetry.
Oh, yes.
When would you have been doing that? 2006?
I started the poetry in 2008.
Okay, so I would have...
Yeah, you know, my first book was Open Window, Reflections in Poetry, and it's out of print now, and I'm redoing it. But yeah, I would come out and do poetry when they would have their poetry jam thing. Mm-hmm. I would do poetry for this faculty, auditorium. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And as you remember, they played the banjo once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when we were joking about that just before the podcast, because I remembered as soon as somebody told me you played the banjo, I remember you doing it at a couple of events when I was in high school. Yeah. And but a couple other guys, both of them been on the podcast. Man, that guy is an amazing banjo player. But you were saying a second ago, before the surgery and after, banjo playing was hard for you after?
Yes, because of the sharp notes, and it really gave me bad headaches.
Like, was that like a tinnitus, like hearing the frequency? Or?
No, it was like, if I can explain it, as pressure. Because you remember, I've got a hole in my head from the surgery. They took a thing out, and went in there. Of course, when they worked on me, well, it took a while to heal. And so for at least the first 5 years after that, it really bothered me. I couldn't even sing after that. I couldn't sing because it hurt so bad. It just took a while. Mm-hmm. But I'm over that now, of course.
Yeah.
I don't have any trouble. I'm back to singing. I still play my banjo some.
All
and,
right. Good. Yeah. Well, that's, so quick question. Did you do any writing before? Like,
no.
Did you want to? Is that something you were drawn to?
Nope. I didn't really think about that, especially when I started writing poetry. I thought, I must be losing my mind. Why would I write poetry? But I couldn't stop. Matter of fact, I got in the habit of just putting a little piece of paper and a pen. I always carried it after that, a little notebook. And I would,
half a dozen of those kind of notebooks right there.
I'd be walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden this thought would come. And I couldn't help myself. I had to write it. It didn't matter.
Well, that's some of the most creative people. Like, this is a weird cultural reference, but there's that movie, and I've not seen it, but it's been years, that movie 8 Mile, that has the famous rapper Eminem in it. Mm-hmm. But his character in that show is always like, writing things down. Like it. But I remember when I first heard you read, you'd kind of describe that. You said, look, these phrases, these paragraphs. They just started kind of flowing out of me, and you just started documenting them.
Yes.
That's fascinating, right? And I've seen, I don't own any of your books, but I've seen some passages that you've done. I've heard you do a reading or two, and yeah, it's great. It's not, so like I'm joking about the lightning strike. Like I had somebody that I knew that claimed they got struck by lightning and that it made them a genius, but I think there was something else going on there. Yeah. You know, like they had some issues, right? They had, and I don't even know if they got struck by lightning. Right. Yeah. I think they just maybe heard, like we said, we've heard these stories.
Yes.
But that is, you can write. Like these books you have here are proof of that. I've had some writers on the podcast. You're the first, well, you're the second poet, right? A guy from Dardanelles come on, Brian Motes. But we were talking about having to build your brand right before we started recording, right? Like, that's the hard part, because you and I were not trained to do that, right? Like, and I'm just figuring it out. I got this gym here and this podcast, and I teach history at the college, but I'm still just like, I don't know how to get it out there. What, other than just write, like obviously you got pen and paper with you, what other strategies did you use to get to here?
Well, actually, I can't tell you that I had a strategy, but let me tell you something about the poetry first. I have a friend that has been reading my book of poetry, and they also know that I started writing all this other stuff.
Okay.
So this lady said, Randy, I got a question for you. And I said, well, what is it? She said, I don't understand how you can write such beautiful poetry and turn around and write a murder mystery.
See, I didn't even know you wrote a murder mystery.
Yes, and children's books. How do you do that? I said, I cannot explain it. It just shows up. Just for instance, the first line of Thought's Harrowing Edge, my first mystery, I was upstairs in my writing room, and I was just writing.
Which I love when you post pictures of that.
And I was just writing some poetry, and I had to stop because a line, the first line in this book, came to mind, and it says, it was just a thought, perhaps an old thought, or the ragged edge of memory from long ago. And then it went 80,000 words.
Wow.
From that one line. I didn't think, I'm going to write this line. This is what I want to write. I didn't do that. It just showed up in my head, and I wrote it down. It's just like I was copying it, if that makes sense.
A podcaster I listen to talks about this. And I think so, and I've done a little bit of research, but the ancients would talk about the Muse.
Yes, it flows.
Right. So, but I'm just fascinated because I talk about what you're, see, so I'm kind of afflicted with this creativity. I call it a disease. Like, I got to make this podcast and put it on the internet. I don't know why. I just feel better about myself when I do it. I refer to it as like a satiation. Like it's like quenching a thirst for me. Like when I create and put things out there, when I wrote my master's thesis, when I make a video for the gym and put it on, like I put one out a couple weeks ago, I got 6,000 views. I've never had a video get that many views. But you know, I put out a ton of videos, didn't get any views, hardly, just a few. But it's just the process of figuring it out is fun. But it's like I just am so afflicted with having to create, and that's I love talking to other creators too. But this concept of like, where does it all come from? What do you think? Like,
well, my mother is a songwriter, written many, many, many beautiful things. Oh my, she's 91.
She's still alive.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
And she still writes stuff. Well, like, that is in my genes.
Okay.
The other thing is my mother loves to talk to people. Well, before the brain surgery, I always liked people.
You were one of the nicest dudes ever. Like,
thank you very much.
We were talking about how one time in the auditorium, I opened a door on your foot, right? And I still feel bad about it, obviously, but I can't tell you, I'm like, I couldn't have done that to a nicer guy. Like, I felt terrible about it because it's just like, why couldn't that have been like Luke Carroll or something, or like one of my buddies. It's
or the bully of the school.
Yeah, it's like this, but that is you always had a very open demeanor. I never had a problem talking. Everybody knew you, Randy.
Yes.
So, like I said, I saw you every day.
Well, I've always tried to be kind and gentle. Of course, we always have our faults. We all have them, and so that's just part of who I am. I love people. And another thing that is and I never used to do things like Facebook, but when I retired from the school, I didn't have this anymore.
Which is something I feel like a lot of retired people talk about.
Yes, so I do Facebook because it gives me a connection. And then when I meet, just like the other day, yesterday, we was over here at the hardware store. Mm-hmm. And here comes somebody I knew, and their face lit up. Randy! And we talked for 15, 20 minutes out in the parking lot. Yeah. And that's who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I super appreciate you being willing to. I don't know. I assume you live in Johnson County, so I appreciate you driving down and.
Just live up at Lamar.
Yeah, well, this right up the road. Yeah. My family lives out at Lake Ludwig now, so I'm
neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. My dad's from Hartman.
Oh, okay.
Aunt and uncle live right there at the bottom of the West Side School at the bottom of the hill there across 64. So great folks. I bet. Do you remember Cora Sanders from?
The names, I know more faces than
I'll
names.
show you a picture. That's my wife now.
Really?
But she's from Clarksville.
Okay.
That's probably her over there kicking things with kids. She's because our gym is over here. I'll give you a tour of it.
I'd love to see it
before we leave. She just posted something. But yeah, she is so great, man. This is her.
Looks familiar.
She looks in that photo. That's about 5 years ago or so when we were just getting going with the business. But man, she has done fantastic things. But she would have been. She's a little younger than me. She is. She is. But she knows you because as soon as I told her you were coming on, she immediately started talking about. She would have been in junior high. Mm-hmm. At the time that you had like surgery and stuff, right? But she remembers it vividly too. Yeah. Like that whole school district was.
Yeah, they really. I'll tell you what happened. One thing, what was it? I would have someone come by the house and said, "Here, Randy, here's $500."
We had with the close down for this. We had people doing that.
Yes, and I even had a teacher. He's retired now. And when I had gone back to work, he said, "Randy, I got a car I'm wanting to sell." And I said, "Oh, Brendan, I don't have any money right now. We're trying to pay these bills and everything." And he said, "But Randy, I want to sell you my car." I said, "Oh, no, I can't." He said, "Yes, I want $1." Sold me his car for $1. He said, "Now you take this and you sell that car." And I did.
That's the stuff people talk about that. They always kind of describe it as restored my faith in humanity or something like that, but that is when we closed down and we're getting back in the swing over here, but we had to close from March 16th until May 4th. And then when we were still real limited on kids, we're just limping back, but we had 28 cancellations last month, but we had 22 new members.
Wonderful.
Right.
It
so
balances itself out.
It will.
It will.
That is something that we just had a huge outpouring of support from the community.
Wonderful.
From our members.
And that's the way it should be. Oh, yeah. Well,
that's such a fascinating story. So pre-surgery, post-surgery, you get this Muse. My question is this. Do you think that you maybe always had this and there was like a block put on it when you got hit in the head with that ball bat?
Because you see, the writing wasn't there. I would lose things when I was a boy. I just lose it. I couldn't. One time I went to the chalkboard. We did long math, chalkboard. Yeah. And the teacher would say, "Randy, here's how you do it. Now you do one, Randy." Okay. I do it, go to my seat, and I think, what? And you remember. So I had that going on. But anyway, after the surgery, it was like somebody turned a spigot on and everything come pouring out, and my memory got so much better. And then, all the reading I had done for years from a little boy.
What is so wild to me is like, I just never would have perceived, which you talk about some symptoms you had, but I never perceived you to be handicapped in any way. Not saying you were handicapped, right?
No,
but,
of course.
But like to have any memory. I mean,
yeah.
Any interaction I ever had with you is just like any normal interaction. Mm-hmm. So, but did you have these like short-term memory issues recurring throughout life? You mentioned in the 70s.
Yeah, as I got older, this was thing in my head was getting worse. And that's why I told you before I would study you. And sometimes I'd walk around the corner, didn't remember what we talked about. I'd have to ask you again, now what did you say? If it was a teacher, what did you want me to do? I started carrying a notebook and writing things down because my memory was slipping. And because what happened was it injured that baseball bat, injured veins in my head.
Yeah.
And they kept getting bigger.
Like an aneurysm, basically.
Yes, they kept getting bigger and bigger. And and so that's why I started having headaches, getting dizzy. And but after the surgery, everything opened. And all the things I thought I'd lost, I had not.
Mm.
I had was I very good with some things? Well, no.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of things, that's why I think the Muse flows so much, is because it was always there, just waiting to get out.
Yeah, and that is, man, I thought about, like, there was a month or so ago where I was really thinking about this Muse concept. This guy I listened to on a show, he was just talking about it. And he's talking about it with another kind of creator type guy and that's such a fascinating concept. But like you said, it's, there's probably some genetic stuff there and you,
of course.
But I'm just glad that we have the capability and technology and people that can turn that around for you.
Oh yeah, it was a wonderful thing. The doctors, they were just great, and the people that were very patient with me after the fact. The teachers, when they found out that all of a sudden I started writing, they said, "Randy, how are you doing this?" Because they knew me. I never did stuff like that. But what they did then, they coached me. The teachers taught Randy.
Somebody I don't know if you remember, but somebody I've wanted to reach out to a few times would be Nancy Coslet. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
She taught English, and she was a positive influence on me.
And I don't know where she's at now.
She's in Houston, Texas.
Is she in Houston? I know she had left, but I didn't know where she was at.
She's got family there. I think her son or something. But
I like Miss Coslet.
She was something else.
Yes, she was. She was fun to talk to and be around.
I've been since I got out of, I've done 53 books this year, right? So I'm trying to do 100 books.
Wow.
But one of the things I've been doing is going back and rereading all the books I didn't read when I was in high school that I pretended to read. But she exposed me to a lot of great stuff that now I'm appreciating more. Like I'm going back to it. But, for me, when I was in school, it was short stories were always my favorite. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm doing so many books now is because of audiobooks.
Well, of course. Yeah, so many.
Yeah, like I'll tell you, I go and ride my bike to the coffee shop in the morning after I'll teach a morning class or do something here. And I'll hop on the bike and get me about 5 miles in, just listen to I got the wireless. Have you seen, I saw you had an Apple iPhone. Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're so great. Like that changed now almost exclusively when I exercise. You were talking about exercising earlier. Like when I do my routine, run, bike, walk, weights, whatever it is, I'm almost always listening to a book.
Yeah, there you go. I guess I'm old school. I just don't use those at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather pick the book up and do this. That's just how I am.
See, and I do that inevitably for work because of the history gig, right? Yeah. So, but it's, I do also think, and I didn't I was homeschooled till 8th grade, but some of my early teachers, like Miss Parker and others, kind of noticed I'm more of an auditory. I love sitting here talking like, oh yeah. Like it makes sense. I do a podcast because I like talking to people. I have no problem doing it. I can strike up a conversation.
That's a wonderful thing.
Be intrigued, ask questions. So it's like, but yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, the audio, like I told Cora this. I didn't know how much I loved books until I started listening to them.
Yeah.
And now I think just because I'm in the habit more of learning via books that I actually physically read more. Right. Yeah. Like I read several chapters when I was sitting on the beach of my Egypt book I've been working on. So it's got me reading more, but I just never, for whatever reason, when I was in school, I was like, well, I have to work. I don't want to do the work.
That's just a typical teenage thing.
Yeah.
You know, I must have been the only oddball in the whole group when I was coming up because I devoured the books.
That's fascinating.
Oh, I devoured.
Yeah. And, how was your memory in relation to, like, when you would read a book, would you retain that well? Mm-hmm. Way better than like interactions with people and stuff?
Yeah, I really did with the books. You know, I'm just a wee little guy, and I would read the Dick and Jane books.
Okay, yeah.
You know, that's what Dad and Mom started me out on that. The teachers, of course. And then as I got older, then I would get into, I can't remember some of the books. Of course, Mark Twain. I devoured Mark Twain. Oh, my gosh.
I've got his works. Like, I've read Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, one of them. But I've got his collection in the audio book. I want to go through that. And also a friend of mine, Billy Reeder, I mentioned the communications guy over here. He's gone down a Hemingway rabbit hole.
Oh, really?
And was kind of telling me the path to take with that. And I had these audiobooks I just call it my stack.
Yep.
And I've been able to do 53 of them, and I'm working. I'll finish another one this week. So,
well, what got started me on the mysteries, really, that I also, when I used to work night shifts some at the school, and I'd have all my work done, and I would on my break, I would go to the library to find something. Well, what started this was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Really?
Sherlock Holmes.
All right.
Yeah. And that's what got me to writing mysteries. And I didn't set out to write one, but when that first line came, I thought, this is a mystery. And so I wrote, and I've got Peripheral, which is finished, except I'm doing a little correcting on it, and it'll be out this month.
Probably. Do you have I was joking, so my master's thesis, I was joking with somebody because I'd released a podcast and I'd sent it to them. They said, hey, you misspelled philosophical. And I was like, and it was their website. So it didn't cue me. I was a .com. So it didn't cue me that I'd misspelled it because all one big word that ran together. And I was like, I'll get that fixed. I made a funny little emoji face. And he's like, it happens. This guy's a writer too. He writes for the About River Valley magazine. And I was like, yeah, it does. My master's thesis has a transposition error on the very first page. And it was peer reviewed. Like, I had a committee of full tenured, full professors. There's like assistant, associate, and full professor. They were all, and they read it all, and it just. So, do you have a peer review process? That's where I was going with that.
Well, I had a teacher said, Randy, let me have Thought's Harrowing Edge, and I'll edit it for you.
Great.
She took it home, kept it for a couple of weeks. One day she brought it back. And you know what a little Post-it note is? The little narrow ones? The whole thing was filled with Post-it notes. And my wife said, Randy, you got an F. Because I lost much. Because of that brain thing. I lost much. But I also learned much by correcting. And I love to do rewrites. Don't mind at all.
The editing and revision. So what I'm excited to do is take another trip back through my thesis. I've been getting organized to do that because it's been over 5 years since I graduated. I've been teaching history for 3.
Wow.
And I've changed and been exposed to more ideas and thoughts, and I would have done this differently, and I would have added this in, and I will probably loop back and turn that into a 7-chapter book. That's my plan. So we'll see. I've been working.
What is the key word I learned from a teacher? Less is more.
See, there's a lot of fat I would cut off my thesis.
That's what I did too.
Because, I mean, just real generally, everything I talk about evolved from Japanese martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, I went deep on Japanese martial arts in the first chapter.
Yeah.
And it was probably some of the well-researched and very in-depth, but it also went a lot of way. I was making a bunch of connections that I didn't really follow up on in chapters 2 and 3. You know, like it, because it was all Japan, and then I start talking about Western societies and the Cold War and Eastern societies, the Cold War, and how they're using martial arts. But really, the only thing is they got those from the Japanese. Both sides did. This guy's a black belt, and this guy's a black belt from this Japanese guy who founded judo.
Yeah.
You know, and I trace those connections. So chapter 2 and 3 is really where it's at. Yeah. I need to trim that chapter 1 way down and then go a whole other direction with the rest of it.
Yeah, it does make a difference. Cut the fat out.
Yeah.
It's like I'm bad about, and I don't always catch it because when I'm writing, I don't correct as I go. I would never finish a book. You can't. You write the book.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you go back and reread the book. And then you have someone to read the book for you.
So do you just have volunteers? Are you members of groups?
Basically, volunteers. I have a friend I wrote when I had written this little book, Little Folk of the Glens. That's like for 4th graders. No. And she's got 3 boys, perfect age group. And she said they love the book.
Great.
She said,
has this been added?
I found some stuff. I said, Rachel, mark it up all you want. Because I would get proof books. Yeah. Smart thing to do.
Yes.
Proof books.
What is a proof book exactly?
A proof book is this book, uncorrected.
Okay, yes.
Okay, you got your manuscript, and you've done all that you can possibly do to make it right. Formatting, I do my own formatting, 90% of that. And all the writing, and I'll go back over it. This book I reread myself and corrected 12 times.
Wow.
But because I lacked the knowledge and the proper punctuation and stuff that I had struggled with. And I've gotten better though. So I order proof books.
Okay.
I turn my manuscript in as good as Randy can get it. Then you have this proof book, and it says right on the book, proof book. So you'll sell somebody a proof book. And then I find someone that would be willing to read it. And that's always volunteers, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they never buy books. I give them books because, anyway. So if you have a proof book, let someone other than you read it because they'll find things that you missed.
I remember, and I don't have an issue. As I got into grad school, I had less of an issue with this. But did your feelings ever get hurt?
No.
When somebody would go through and be like, Randy, what? This is terrible. What were you doing here?
No, I learned not to because I encourage it. Hurt my feelings. Tell me, Randy, this is wonderful. Tell me, Randy, this stinks.
That's a great way to think about it.
So I had written this poem. And you remember Miss Spillers? Or not Miss Spillers, Miss Lynch?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right. She's still at Clarksville?
Yeah. So one day, and she would always praise me. And then sometimes she said, "Now, Randy, I'm not always going to praise you." I said, I want honesty. Don't tell me, Randy, this is so nice, and be lying to me. I want the truth. So I had given her this poem to read. She said, "I am so disappointed in you." Didn't hurt my feelings. She was helping me. Take that because you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reason I asked that question is because when I was my first 4 years of college and that stuff, I remember somebody had made some remarks on it. Like, well, you just don't understand where I was going with that. It initially, but through the process of getting revised by more professors and more peers.
Yeah.
That's part of getting it. When you get a bachelor's in history, there's a senior paper and you got to go through the peer revision with your peers and with your professor. And I like that. And I will tell you, that is something that I've thought a lot about. Some of these questions is like, as I revise my thesis, I'm going to need people to read it.
You have to.
And I do have people to read it, but I don't have, like I did when I was there, like, hey, you three, you're an expert in Asian history. Like, oh, fantastic. You're the head of this whole party. You're going to be able to help me for sure. The professors that were my thesis advisors really provided me so much, like what you're saying. But that's, now that I am a teacher also, I know, like one of my good friends, we go to concerts, or we did go to concerts together. I don't know. I had 5 concerts I was going to. The furthest out being November, all canceled. Oh, right. So but we'll go to a concert at River down the River Market or something. But he's an English professor at the same Morrilton, and then he's proved. Hey, will you read this text for my podcast? Mm-hmm. And he's man, this is what I do.
There you go. That's the good friend.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I'm fortunate because the teachers care.
Yes,
they do care, and they've helped me so much.
I like your covers, like this one particularly. I think I remember when you were talking about finding that photo.
Yes.
Right?
That was out at Hagerville.
Okay.
There's a little church out there called Annie's Chapel.
Yeah.
From the 1800s. And that was a perfect little...
Cora's grandpa lives out there, and then one of my judo... Do you know out there around Hagerville, right? If you're coming from Russellville, let's say you go through Dover, right when you cross into Johnson County, there's a house there on the hill with some dinosaurs.
Really?
Made out of like wrenches.
I guess I've never
There's
seen
a
that.
mailbox that's a dinosaur. That guy taught me judo. And he's 75 now, 76 maybe. Mm-hmm. But he's retired, lives up there, and it's a great dude. And real creative builds, but all of these are built out of like old wrenches and
that'd be
car
cool to
parts.
See.
Yeah. But so, that is fascinating. There's some people have written about his dinosaur collection.
Really?
Out there. Yeah, there's a couple of newspaper articles.
I'd love to take my grandson out there.
Yeah, I'll try and think to send you the link to the article. But so how did you get this cover done? These are photos. This is art.
My wife did the cover.
Really? Yeah. She drew that, painted that?
Mm-hmm.
Was that watercolors or what?
Probably. I'm not sure.
I was just talking with someone yesterday about how I would love. So I mentioned I'm going to take, for the first time in a long time, I'm taking a formal guitar lesson tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
That's so nice.
But drawing, like
I can draw a stick man.
It's about where I'm at. And when I realized that I was not capable of drawing anything other than stickmen versions of RoboCop when I was a kid, I moved on. But there was a time when I would draw a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
And I have had friends as adults that have kind of taught themselves how to draw and drawn beautiful portraits.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
My grandson and I have he's about 9 or 10 years old, and we have a little funny thing that I do. I draw a pig. And it's just the front of the pig, the nose and the ears and, the tail, and I'll put cat. I started doing that when he's little. Or I'd say, this is a bird. And he'd say, no, it ain't. And that's just a joke between us. Yeah. And but that's my extent of drawing. A stick man or a little round-faced pig, and that's it. I can't do it.
There's a funny meme out there that everybody keeps circulating for anything. It first started because it's a TV show, but it's like a beautifully drawn horse. Mm-hmm. And it'd say something like 2019. And then it turns into this looking stick figure of a horse by the time it gets to the head, and it's like 2020. It just kind of like comments on whatever,
That's funny.
But it is. It's just it looks beautiful back here on the hindquarters, and then it gets to stick figure by the. Yeah. I'm on the stick figure end of the spectrum. But I asked a guy here in town that teaches kids and stuff if he would give me some drawing lessons. But what I think I'll probably ultimately have to do is try and catch like maybe a summer class or something at Tech.
It might be very relaxing for you.
I think it would.
Yeah. It just, things like that. Just like, how I relax? I make walking sticks.
Here. Let me show you that.
Yeah. Okay. See, that's been done by someone that can really work. I can't do
Michael
this.
Brandon is the name of the guy.
I can make it look like this, but I cannot do this.
That's
beautiful.
He, the story with this is my dad worked with that guy, and he had him make a few of these. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa, who's since passed away, we made that one for him. Right, that's his American flag. I got up there on top. I don't know if you can see it on top of the bookcase there. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, and I've got over somewhere. There's he used to make these windmill type deals, a rooster.
Yes.
And go like that. I got a bunch of his stuff in here. Nice. So, but this was his walking stick, but real neat. Right. There's a guy I know. He's made me some bow staffs out of like Bodark, Osage Orange Bodark. Yeah. So, but the stuff like this that people make, I love it, man.
Yeah, and I just give them away.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a hobby, and it's very, very relaxing. I've got a shaving horse. You know what a shaving horse is?
No.
Okay.
No.
Shaving horse is basically a workbench that you set on.
Okay.
A foot pedal and a clamp up here. You put your work in the clamp, push down with your foot. I use a draw knife, and you can probably peel the bark off. It's a shaving horse.
Wow.
Yeah, I made one. I saw one. I thought, I could do that. So I made one. And it's just relaxing.
This guy I know, if you look behind you, see the guy with the coonskin hat on?
Yes.
That's an artist here, and he actually painted those boots behind it. He is, but he does these things that they're carvings. He'll make a carving, and then he prints, like puts the paper over the carving.
Oh, what do you know?
It is, and he's on the podcast and talked about it. It's the first time I'd ever even really heard of that art technique. I'd see him doing it. I didn't really know what he was doing. I didn't know if he was painting that or what, but it basically becomes like a stamp.
Okay.
So he'll make, and he puts all this time into carving it, and then it becomes like a stamp, and he'll make like 7 or 8 prints or something.
And he's got the original.
Yes. So, but fascinating process of how he does that.
There's some wonderful talent out there. Oh my gosh. Kind of makes you envious, you know?
That's what I love about what I'm doing here is like, I mentioned all these people. I'm like, that guy was on the podcast. You've been on the podcast. There's other poets, writers. It's getting to talk to people and hear their process, how they do things. That's something that's fascinating to me. So, this photo is like an iconic Johnson County image, right? Nebo. Oh, is that Nebo? I thought that was Strawberry Bluffs for a second.
No, what happened, we were looking for a cover for that because there is a bluff in that book that is, and the story about behind one reason I did remember now writing that story was because I was hunting when I first came here, didn't know anybody much. And I had a fellow that I worked with, he said, let's go out up on Yarborough Mountain up there and we'll go hunting. We was hunting along, and it's just getting dusk dark. And I came up on a bluff, and I was close enough to it that it frightened me.
I know
because it was way down. Okay, and I remember seeing a wide open valley, a white farmhouse, and a ribbon of road. It stayed.
Yeah.
And there it is in the book.
Okay. Yeah. So you have photos throughout the book as well? No. Just covers.
Just the cover.
How much do you put into? So it's not just writing. You got to come up with all this other stuff. What the jacket's going to look like. This part.
Well, I just sit down and try to get an idea of what I want. I'll write my ideas down, or a family member. We say, Randy, I got a good idea for this book cover, and I listen. And so, but somebody though did say, they asked me, how long does it take you to write a book? I said, well, let me put it this way. This book actually took me probably 2 years. And I said, if I charged by the hour, you could never buy my books. Hours upon hours upon hours of people behind the scenes, they don't see that.
Yeah.
All they see, all of a sudden, here's a book. No.
How many projects are you working on at once?
I have got another mystery I'm working on, listening, and another 1800 story I'm working on, that's what that is. I've got short stories I'm working on. I've got another children's book I'm working on. And then, of course, off and on, when the Muse hits, I'll write another poem for future. I've probably got at least four projects that I didn't miss on.
I'm glad that we are talking. I had no idea you had as much going on as you do.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, which is great. You're a writer.
Yeah.
Like you're not just because I was like, yeah, Randy writes poetry. And I knew you had done some other stuff, maybe short story, but I was not following along with the
that's
depth.
Probably part of my fault because I don't always display what I do. And I really should more to promote myself more. And that's probably key. But then I don't want to overdo.
Well, your simple promotions led me to contact you and ask you to come on the show, so there's that, because I mentioned this earlier. I like the little previews you give, right? Just in the morning time. Cause I'll tell you, I get up at 4 most mornings, and your posts are one of the first posts I see. I think when I reached out to you initially, it was like early morning like that.
Yeah. There's some mornings I'm up at 2:30.
Yeah,
not always, but yeah.
What time you go to bed?
Between 8 and 9.
That's I get out of here at about 8, 7:30.
Yeah.
Go home, eat, go to bed.
Well, I never used to do that till I had the brain surgery. I couldn't sleep before. I just couldn't. I had to read and read and read and read. And finally, I'd be able to, my mind was settled down. I could go to sleep. But after the brain surgery, I started getting sleepy. 7:30. Randy's starting to drift, and don't always make it through a movie if we're watching a movie. Can't help it.
That's been my evening. I was just thinking yesterday, Cora and I, when we were younger and I was doing less in college, every night we would watch a movie.
Yep. I used to stay up till 11, 12 o'clock. But after that, it all went away.
But I stopped being able to stay up till midnight when I started teaching and stuff. But man, now I'll tell people that getting up at 4. I listened to a guy that's a former Navy SEAL, and he had this big philosophy about why you should get up at 4. Mm-hmm. And I'd listened to this other Navy SEAL, and he was saying 4:30.
Yeah.
And I decided to go with 4. But that's one of the most regulating things I've ever done. Mm-hmm. Because last night, oddly, I don't know, well, I'm watching this film from 2003, Gods and Generals, Civil War film. Thurman and Julie Storing, she was the same age as me. She graduated in 2006. We're doing these podcasts where we basically review all these Civil War films and talk about the historical accuracy and things. So, but I stayed up late watching that Gods and Generals last night till about 11:15. I looked down. I was like, oh, this is rare. But I hadn't stayed up that late, and I think my rhythm's a little off because we just got back from vacation.
That can throw you off, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how does your publishing work? Are you self-published?
I self-published that.
Okay. Did you come up with your own kind of publishing company name?
Yeah, on Facebook, I've got R.C. Smith, which you know. Mm-hmm. And then I've got Reading Circle.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, okay.
And then also, this is just for fun for me, is there was a thing on there that they advertised Dirt Roads of Arkansas.
Yeah.
It's just photographs.
Yeah, my dad's in that. Okay. It's a group on Facebook, right?
So I joined that because it's another interaction for me.
Randy, I'll tell you, sharing my content in groups is why I have a video get 6,000 views or something like that. And it's so easy because what I'll do is I'll put the podcast on, I'll schedule it to come out next week or something. And when it comes out, I just hit share and my groups pop up and I go,
yeah.
And it goes to those groups. But my dad's in that group, and we were fishing the other day up around Hartman, Horsehead Creek. And he was taking pictures of, there's where Mr. King's church is?
I think I do. Yes.
Out around that area, there's the old Catholic church. They call it Catholic Church Road there off 64 in Hartman. But there's a couple really old churches over there. But he stopped and took a bunch of pictures of them, old cemetery. Yeah. So,
yeah, and I've gotten into photography now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this kind of things that develop by virtue of needing photos?
You see, my next mystery, I've got to have a picture of a swimming pool. And so I've been wanting to do photography anyway. So there's another way I can find someone that will let me borrow their swimming pool and set up a photo shoot.
Yeah.
And that's just an idea for a book cover. And all because of photography.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many outlets.
I have a camera on my phone here, and I have some nice a digital camera, but we have a friend, she's coming to take pictures of the gym.
Yeah.
But that's for like our website.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I could definitely stand to get better at myself.
Yeah.
I had to have some headshots made for just different things I do. Luckily, we have a friend.
Yes.
So
makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I try to utilize everything I can to promote the writing. And I'm learning, you know, and it just takes a while.
It does. But, you know, even with you having these abilities you've unlocked, you're sitting here talking about this process. I'm like, man, that's the same process I went through when I was in school.
Yeah.
You know, like meaning after high school, like when I was being trained to write a 130-page master's thesis.
Yeah.
I went through all the same head scratching that you probably did.
I had to learn how to publish, but I'm a publisher.
Yeah.
I had to learn that.
Do you have like some people talk about this, some very renowned authors. Do you have like a writing group that you're a member of that is not necessarily?
I really don't. There is one. You know, there's a friend of ours tried to start a writing group, and then I don't know what happened. It just nothing came of it. But there is probably a writing group if I would want to get involved. But then there is always that time factor.
See, I wonder if that isn't shifting more to online.
Probably so.
Groups and whatnot.
You know, people's lives are so busy. Just like, I don't just write. Right now, I'm building a carport.
Yeah.
You know, there's always something else to do. Like,
do you ride horses? Did I see you?
to ride horses.
Okay, I didn't know. There's something else I didn't know about you. I was browsing around on your profile and saw a few pictures of you riding.
Yeah, and I did that for research for, here it is, this book. Matter of fact, I went out to Wyoming to do research for that book.
Wow.
And I went out to a horseback ride. And so I was able to incorporate, mainly, I wasn't about the landscape. It wasn't about anything but the writing experience. That's all that was about. But I took that writing experience and incorporated it into the story.
Do you have any authors who have inspired you or their processes have inspired you in what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. This might help you. I read Mark Twain's story, his own personal story, and how the writing, how it affected him, and his wife helped him. And he learned that, finally learned he would come up maybe some writer's block, or the idea, the whole story he was writing would just completely stop. Happened to me. And I thought, well, how did you fix that? And then I kept reading and studying him, and he said, I learned that when a story stops or an idea stops, to put it on the shelf and leave it there. And he said, you will find that the well of words will fill up again. And he was so right.
The guy I just had on last week who's also a writer. He published all sorts of pieces. And he said the same thing. Yeah. He said he will write something. His people that give him feedback will even tell him it's good, but will also tell him to sit on it.
You betcha.
Don't release that.
That's right.
Like, yes, it's good, but think about it for 2 months.
Yep.
Or, you know, maybe just come back to that later.
There's a poem in the book there, and it's called Playful Wind. I was in the yard one fall, and I started seeing and looking at what the wind was doing. And I wrote the first 2 verses. It stopped. A year later, I finished it. Short poem.
Did you observe more playful wind and come back to it, or?
Well, I think it could have been that way, but sometimes something like that will just stop. And it didn't matter how much I tried to force it, it wouldn't work. And then I got it.
Where do you put, so like I notice myself being in rhythms and patterns of working on something and then, you know, coming back to it later or something, but it's always like a year, 18 months or something, like for martial arts techniques and things I do here at the gym. Where do you put that stuff? You just print a physical copy and set it up on the shelf there?
I will put it in my computer or in my notebook, and I come back to it when I can feel the Muse flowing. The Muses quit on that poem. Just stopped dead. It wouldn't come back. It wasn't ready. I'd like to do it for you sometime. I can do it for you, and you could. I like to write things. I wanted you to be able to see what I saw in that poem. Can I do it? It's called Playful Wind. It's not long. The wind came blowing through the trees as though it were to pass. Instead, it lingered for a while to mingle with the grass. It then began to frolic with leaves upon the ground, and as they lifted in the air, the wind swirled them around. I watched with fascination the antics of the breeze. It rushed around the yard once more, then blew back through the trees. It took a year.
I love that you have it memorized. I was going to ask if you would read it, but you have it. It's stored.
Yeah, there's many in there. I did one called Walk in the Snow, and I was going down our road one November, and it started snowing. Snowflakes were swirling around, and I wrote A Walk in the Snow. And and I wrote what I was seeing as I went. I wrote probably the first verse, ran home, and finished it.
You always have like a little pen and pad with you? Did you have one that day? So then you just commit it to memory.
Memorized the first verse, ran home, and then got to pondering about what I saw. And I wrote what I saw from memory.
Wow. So that is such a contrast to what you're talking about. Did you ever think any point before the surgery that you were coming down with dementia or something like that?
No. I always I had always been able to put off pain, kind of, up to a point, of course. And it never even occurred to me, to connect the injury as a young boy and to the headaches I would start to have. It never even occurred to me.
How did you make that connection?
The doctor started asking me questions after the fact. Randy, tell me about your childhood. Has it had any injuries or anything? Well, yeah, I got hit with a baseball bat once. He said, that's it.
Wow.
I hadn't even remembered that until after the surgery. Then I started remembering things like that. Just maybe I probably just put it out of mind. That's how I am. I don't hold on to things on purpose unless it's something profitable that will help. That's different. But the pain, let that go.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people, are you on Amazon?
I'm on Amazon under Randy C. Smith.
Okay.
And or on Facebook. Reading
RC
Circle Publishing. RC Smith.
See, I'll have to like your Reading Circle Publishing right now. I'm not, I wasn't charting. Oh, all right. Perfect. Okay, great. Yes, I'd wondered about the publishing. I'm glad that I asked you about that.
Yeah, and I don't always talk about publishing, but I do try to make comments about, what happened. Like, stay tuned because Peripheral is almost done, and
yeah, I like that. I'm about to, I just made a website for the podcast. I didn't make it. A good friend of mine did.
Mm-hmm.
But it is this at the Reading Circle right there?
Let me see it.
Which one is it? Is it either one of those? Or it's on Facebook?
It looks like it.
Okay.
Yeah, if it looks like that little.
Yes.
It should be.
Is that an eyeball or a wave?
Yeah, it's a wave. My son.
Looks like another thing. There's a brush stroke in Buddhism. It's called an Enso.
Oh, really?
And we put that on a lot of our logos. I don't have one in here.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Great. So yeah. So you're on Amazon. You're saying like where you're on Facebook. But I was a blog. Do you have anything like that?
No. And I tried to do a website, but I don't have the know-how. And it was more trouble to me right then than it was worth. I never got any results because I didn't know how to make it work. Keywords, same way with my try to promote these. And whenever I do the printing on their website, you're supposed to have all these keywords, but I don't have any luck. I just don't know the how. and I can't afford to have somebody just come in. I just don't have the income for that. But I'd love to have a website. It'll come in time.
I was telling somebody that because I only had a website for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I've been posting. Every time I make a post, I'll try and put the website at the bottom. But I was telling somebody, it's like, hey, here's the video, and I know. And then I was like, oh, you just like the audio? I forgot because it was somebody who suggested I had this other writer come on. I sent it to her. She's a local educator, and I was like, oh wait, here's the audio. I was like, it's at these 10 audio places. I was like, wait, it's just on my. You just go to my website. That's the easiest place to access it, unraveledpodcast.com. But one thing I'm working on there, and my web guy has got to teach me how to do it, though, is to do the blog post.
Yeah.
But my web guy this guy's redoing our gym and doing the podcast, too. My previous web guy was in Louisiana, and he did a good job, but hey, here's the blog. Will you post it for me? And there's a few times where he didn't post it, and it's like that blog was time sensitive. Yes. Like it was about this thing we're doing over here. Mm-hmm. So that's the ability to be able to do it myself, but I've neglected learning how to do web stuff.
Yeah, I am not very good at that kind of stuff. Really not. I had to go through quite a process to learn how to publish my own books. That was something else. Mm-hmm. But I remember I did learn. And I could probably do a website, but it would take me a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Between all the other stuff I do,
Yeah, that's the same. Because everybody, too, like right now I'm not teaching the summer. I taught the last 2 summers, but everybody always like, Brian, you're so busy. You do so much. And I'm like, yeah, but I just really do a bunch of stuff I enjoy. So it really doesn't seem that way. It kind of does, but it's like the history job, the podcast, the gym. It seems like a lot, but it's a lot in that it would keep me from developing a website or something that was time consuming for a duration. Because even when he's doing the website, I'm providing him all the text, all the photos, all the logos. So I have to put stuff into it, even though I'm not building it.
Well, and it's not free either. That's expensive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking probably, by the time this guy's all said and done, and even on my last one, maybe $3,000.
Oh, yeah.
Which, like, I have these members that pay memberships at the gym, and I'm able to take that money and put it back into the website because the website's advertising to get members. So but for people like yourself that are like this podcast, like Cora made this, our 10-year anniversary was just the other day, and she made this post today, and it actually kind of it did make me cry. But at the bottom of it, she's like, it was just as beautiful, everything, all these great memories, like 6 paragraphs, and she's like, I'm tired of you buying podcast stuff. But it is, this is, I've really put all my stuff in here that I've accrued. Like the house has just become Cora's abode of anything she wants. And this is like this for me is probably like your writing room.
Yeah. I've got my stuff in my writing room, and, but it's all the things that I've done and been through. And, just like when I first got I sent my, copyright off.
I'm doing that right now.
My manuscript for a copyright, and I had to learn how to copyright.
Did you do a consultant attorney or anything for that? Okay.
All you got to do is go to U.S. government copyright, and everything you need is right there.
Okay. I'm going through that process, and I know a guy, Brandon Hobbert. I don't know if you remember that guy. He's another Clarksville graduate. He was probably a big,
I saw him.
Probably a big butthead when we were younger. But man, he grew up to be one of the smartest and most ingenuitive attorneys.
Wow.
He set up our nonprofit. We offer some free training here at the gym. He set up our LLC, and his family. This guy's at Christmas. He's close family friend.
That's wonderful.
But now he's involved in this big. He and this other guy have started like 5 law firms, like 5 different locations. So he's kind of like, I got to pass you off to this guy.
Yeah.
I don't even do that right now.
Yeah.
And so they're busy. So like, I'm like, I could pay this dude $500, or I could figure out, because that's kind of what I gathered is you can do it yourself.
It's pretty simple. Just a form you fill out, and on the writing, it's now gone up to, for your copyright, is $65, which is peanuts.
Nothing. Yeah.
And it's U.S. copyright. They used to try to tell you, and it still does, just like whenever you physically write something, like on the computer or on the typewriter, that's considered copyrighted, but it won't stand up in a court of law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That will.
Yeah.
I have the
patent, basically.
Yeah, I have where the copyright is registered, and I've got the piece of papers that shows this was registered, certain date. And so I've got those. And if you don't do that, anybody can say, "Oh, I wrote that story. You stole my characters." Well, no.
I talked about this recently on the show, but something similar happened to me with the podcast.
Really?
I went to create the website a few weeks ago, and Life Unraveled podcast was not available. And I was like, I researched before I named the podcast. There was nothing. In the last year, Oregon State University, the humanities department, I got a humanities degree, had created a podcast. And what was funny is that they had to have seen when they went to social and stuff. I didn't have the website. All the social media they couldn't use that name. So they like life, comma, colon, unravel, like something like that. And I was just like, okay. But that's why I started looking down, called my buddy, like, hey, so we need to do that for the gym and this. But honestly, I contacted him and was like, look, my wife is mad at me because I spent so much money on this. Yeah. And I was like, she jokingly makes posts about it. It's like basically I've invested a lot in this, and I started this 2017. You guys kind of came along after that. I'm talking to my attorney about going through patents, figuring out what to do with that. So would you mind taking your stuff down? And they had never even released an episode, was another thing about it. They never put out any content. They just gobbled up the web domain and then some social media, like a Twitter, which I didn't have a Twitter and still not going to make one.
Nope.
But they were really nice about it. Their web guy was like, because I'd messaged him and I never heard back. And then I heard my phone, like, sometimes I'll make the doot or something if somebody's typing. And I looked down and I saw that page was replying to my message. And I sat there and watched it for like 30 minutes. I was doing other stuff, and then they hit me with this big long response and was like, my boss really wants me to take care of this. So we're going to sorry, I didn't reply sooner. This is what we're going to do. And they've turned it over. So
you see this right here. I named my book The Long Journey Home. And I found out that there's about 4 other books pretty close, but you cannot copyright a title.
Interesting.
Can't copyright Window to the Soul.
So there's no issue.
No, anybody could
I've wondered about it because movies are like, there's a lot of movies, the same title.
But like this one, Thoughts Harrowing Edge, well, likely anybody's going to name a book Thoughts Harrowing Edge. But if they did, it's just common, and everybody does it. Yeah. It's like I wrote a little children's story called Moose Trapped. And Moose Tracks is what it was, yes. So I got on there and Googled Moose Tracks. 4 books, little kids' books called Moose Tracks, which is okay because everybody else did it. So I named mine Moose Trapped because the little boy gets trapped up in a tree by a moose, So I just switched, and it's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Long Journey Home, that's not the only one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And well, these are little things.
Yeah.
Man, think about how much you figured out over. That's what, like I tell people, I got my master's degree 6 years ago, I guess 5 years ago. I didn't start working until 2 or 3 years ago and teaching history. But all that aside, I feel like I have learned more.
Oh yeah.
Since which I kind of probably you would say that since retiring. Like, man, how much have you learned since retirement? Like you're supposed to be done relaxing, which I would say you probably are relaxing. This is probably relaxing for you, right?
This is very relaxing to me because it takes my mind off of whatever I need to get to over here. Yeah. And, it just really, as one man said, Randy, it's just a hobby. So for right now, yeah. And I'm really enjoying myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a book I was listening to is talking about this concept of logotherapy. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
Basically, just like we mentioned earlier, people retire and then they maybe die sooner than they should or something because they just kind of stop.
They stop.
They stop their mind. They stop their body. Whereas logotherapy is, based off my limited research on it, is if you find a passion, like let's say, or your life is a collection of your hobbies, things you like. You're carving,
Mm-hmm.
making these and this and podcasts, martial arts, or whatever it is. Like that's with me. I get to do, fortunately, 3 things I'm very passionate about. Yeah. So I have a more fulfilling life, I think.
Oh yeah. When I worked at the high school, I loved my job, but there came a time in life I kept, looking a little forward to the retirement.
Yeah.
And
the next phase.
The next phase of my life. And I'll tell you something funny. We still laugh about this. You probably know me by now. I'm a very, very busy guy. Extremely so. You
have occupied your time, for sure.
And so it was funny when we started talking to the kids about we're going to retire. And so my son told Cheryl, Mom, what are we going to do with Dad? Because school was my life.
How long did you work? 30 years, something
32.
Like that? 32. How long have you been retired?
4 years or so.
Oh, I thought you'd been out longer.
No,
for some reason.
Or maybe 5 at the most, But yeah, no. And so, yeah, I'm never, ever bored.
So
ever.
It's amazing. I thought for some reason, I was thinking you stepped out right around the surgery.
No, that was 2008, 2005, I mean.
Even better that you were able to go back to work after all that.
Oh, yeah.
Resume your normal life.
Normal life. Nothing changed except for the writing, and some things changed. Like I slowed down like I was on the music. I slowed way down because it hurt. In the singing because it hurt. But, I've written some songs.
I was going to ask you that earlier. I'm glad you brought that up. Lyrics? Does that come to you in addition?
I do the tune and, all the words. And I wrote Chasing Dreams, which is in the book. And I got looking at it, and I think I left part of it out. But that's okay because I wasn't going to do anything with it, really. And I wrote, there's another song or 2 in there. And,
Great, man. Great.
In that poetry book. Yeah.
Well, Randy, I super appreciate you coming on and talking with me, man. It's been great to catch up. I may never would have talked to you again if I didn't do this podcast. Yeah. So that's been a nice silver lining to all of.
Yeah, and that's the bad thing about departing from a job you've been on for 32 years. All of a sudden, everybody's gone out of your life, almost. I've been called back to the school a couple of times to visit, which is fun. Mr.
King had me come in a few years ago.
Oh, he did?
And which meant a lot to me. He spoke at my grandma's funeral. Right. Yeah. So I've always had, and my mom had him as history teacher.
That's amazing.
In the 77 or something, right?
Isn't that amazing?
But he had me come in and speak with the FBLA. I don't know if that was what they were wanting because I was like, listen here, people. I have not done anything that I was told to do when I went here that would make me successful. And I was like, and here's what I thought when I was on your side, And I was like, and here's the mistakes I made because I was thinking that way. And I was like, here I am running this business. I have my website and video playing in the background. I was like, but I thought I need to get a master's in business for this. I was like, I took 1 business class.
Isn't that amazing?
But
you have done wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
But and it's just, I remember I made a post the other day. 2 of the most defining things someone said to me, these people close to me and that love me, right? Mm-hmm. But they were like, this MMA stuff is just a fad. Right now we have the 2nd largest gym in the state. We have 300
wonderful?
Students.
Wow, so good.
And then, hey, what are you going to do with a history degree?
Yeah.
And, and that's kind of my angle. It's like, hey, no one thought I would be a successful martial arts person. No one thought I would, a history teacher. Like, that's the only thing you could do. What if you don't get a job?
Yeah.
And I am fortunate. I know people with PhD that they don't get to teach college full time.
No.
So a girl I went to grad school with has been in PhD school for 6.5 years.
Wow.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
And she teaches as many classes as me and gets paid half as much.
Wow.
Because that's the plague right now is these universities get adjuncts and they pay them like $2,000 a class and they get them to teach 5 classes. Well, I teach 5 classes and get a salary of about double what that is.
Yeah, the salary is,
Yeah.
I worked for salary at the school for all those years and it paid off.
Yeah, good. I remember, a friend of mine, I hadn't seen or heard of it, David Brown. You remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't seen him in a long time, but he's a friend of my dad. I knew David real well, but I remember talking with him. That seemed like a great gig for what he did at school, what you did at the school. I don't know what all that entailed, but it's it seems like it worked out for you.
It worked out just fine. I mean, if I'd have been in a factory, for instance, I'd have just been shot. It wouldn't have worked. But because I worked at the high school, I got retirement.
See, Cora, it's funny. I've been on the job 3 years and I never checked my retirement one time. I'm just bad at that kind of stuff. But Cora needed the information for our guy that's set up her retirement. She's taken over it for me. But I didn't even know I'd accrued that much retirement in that 3 years. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
So, but if I'd had a factory job, there wouldn't have been almost nothing.
Yeah.
But I was put in the school and because I had such a bad experience in school, well, I had fears. Even, I was probably 20 something when I started at the school. And I thought, how is this going to turn out? Because all I could remember was what school was like when I was a boy growing up and how bad it was. But when I got there, God healed me of that because I met loving, kind people.
Yeah.
They helped me.
Yeah. I remember I mentioned being homeschooled. Like there's a period of my life where all I wanted to do was go to school.
Yeah.
To meet people, to have socialization, to have friends, to have teachers like Miss Coslet.
Yeah.
I'll tell you after we wrap up, I'm going to, because I thought about reaching out to her to say, hey, what do you think I should read? I just never come on the podcast.
Yeah.
That would be
great.
That would be great. Yeah. And that's another cool thing. Like I just seeing your posts in the morning, I was like, man, I want to talk to Randy.
Well, I'm glad you did because, I've had times where I thought, well, do I really need to be doing this? But I get such fun.
It's a reward.
It's a reward to me. And get to keep that connection going. Mm-hmm. I am a people person. I got to have that.
Yeah.
So
keeps that flame.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Well, if you and you may hear from me again. I would. So. I tell you, Randy, if you got a new book coming out, anything like that, let me know.
Okay, I will.
It'd be great.
Peripheral will be out this summer, and I'm just doing some last minute corrections on it, and it's about ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, I tell people when they come on, this will always be on the internet when people are looking at your stuff. This will probably be something that starts coming up when they type in to look for you and something you can share with your audience.
And I want you to pick out a book that you want.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that you want. Just help yourself.
I'm going to do this one.
All right.
This has been the most, the title, the photo, this has been the one that's been most interesting to me because I had no idea that you were doing mysteries.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate that.
Well, that's not a problem.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
And I'll sign it before we get
out
of here.
Hey, yeah, let me see. I got a pen here somewhere. Do you have a pen?
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, here we go.
I got one right there. Okay, I've got one. But
I'll tell you, my dog bit the end of it. She's a runt.
Oh, let me tell you something funny that happened to me. It's not funny, and I always ask now. Well, I was doing a book signing, and it was my first book. And, of course, I'm nervous. A lot of people lined up to buy my book.
You feel rushed.
And this gentleman said, make it out to Greg. I said, okay. And I looked. I had written Gerg. I am dyslexic.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've wondered about that. I invert
dyslexic.
numbers a lot.
Yeah. And matter of fact, this book, and I never saw it. I don't know how many people read it.
Well, that transposition error on my master's thesis too, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
And a friend of mine said, "Oh, Randy, I loved your book, but you spelled 2 words backwards."
interesting. And
After it already been in
even the
print.
peer review process and everything.
Nobody saw it. Nobody. But he did. He said, "Randy, that's backwards, too." So,
Interesting.
Brian.
Brian.
Uh-oh.
I got another one here. I've got a big thing full of ink pens, and I've just moved all this in the last couple of weeks, Randy. I had to get the room done. Put the trim up and I'll tell you what, after I read this, I'll probably frame it and hang it up in here. That'll be a good addition. That's what I love about this. Got so much stuff in here that I have acquired through connections to people. Thank you, Randy.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it.
That's a great deal to me.
Hey.
Just to get to see you.
Hey, man. Well, like seeing your smiling face.
My
is
foot's all better.
Like I remember and you're just being real. You're like, yeah, I'll probably limp on it for a few weeks, but it'll be fine. And I was like, oh, man. Well, thanks, Randy.
I was probably teasing you.
I think you were.